And we are joined now by Fox Sports lead game analyst Joel Klatt, breaking down the Big Ten as he does with us every week. And Joel, you were here in the Chicago area last week. We were talking in our installment that we did a week ago about Oregon perhaps being the best team in the country. You got a chance to see them in person on the lakefront there against Northwestern. What did you take from watching the Ducks?
They're an elite team with one major flaw that has to be fixed. I think that they are ready to compete for and possibly win a national championship, save for the fact that they've got to stop the run better. Yeah. And I think that they know it. I know that they know it. And that's why Dan Lanning was so upset. If you saw the post-game interview with Jenny Taft, he was salty. And that's why. They gave up, 178 yards, but it was more than that, because if you take away the sacks and the weird fumble that happened with Preston Stone that took away a bunch of yards, Northwestern really ran the ball for over 200 yards against Oregon and controlled the game at times. And outside of a couple of mistakes, whether it was penalties or turnovers, Northwestern was executing the blueprint to go out there and upset the Ducks. So I really like Oregon everywhere else. I'm a huge believer in Dante Moore. Rev, I think he's spectacular. I think their stable of running backs might be as deep, clearly, as anybody in the country, and very talented. They're great on the outside. I like their offensive line. They just have to stop the run a lot better. And if they don't, they won't win the national championship if they play defensively like they did against Northwestern. Penn State will take advantage of that. Others will take advantage of that. So that has to get cleaned up. And
based on what you have seen to this point, how would you rank the top of the Big Ten? Where do they fit in, and how do you see the top of the league?
That's a great question. The class is Ohio State at this point. I think that we would all probably agree, even with a couple of those interceptions. By the way, the score against Ohio is not indicative of the game. They outgained them by, 390, almost 400 yards in that game. A couple of mistakes prevent points from going up. So Ohio State would be number one. I still think Oregon is going to be number two for me because the elements are there. The run defense did surprise me a little bit. I've got Penn State at 3, and clearly they haven't played a lot of people, so that's a fishy ranking from my standpoint. It could be a lot higher. We'll see when they face Oregon. I have Michigan number 4, Rev. The way they fixed themselves going from OU to Central Michigan, granted a lesser opponent, but the change in style, taking the bubble wrap off of Bryce Underwood, that'll pay dividends. And Nebraska better watch out, because Nebraska doesn't stop the run very well. Cincinnati ran it for 200 yards on them. And this team will test you in your run defense. So I've got Michigan 4. Illinois, Indiana is kind of a tandem right there at 5. And that's why I can't wait for this week's game, because then we get to see, okay, which one of these programs is better this year moving forward. And then don't forget, guys, about USC and Washington. They would be right there as well. Jaden Maiava has been terrific. He's been one of the better quarterbacks in the entire country. Their defense is decent. USC is going to be salty, and nobody's talking about Washington. And I guarantee you they beat somebody, and we're going to be like, whoa, what's going on with Washington? They've got the second longest home win streak in the country, only to Georgia. They get a couple of their really important big games against better opponents in their home stadium. Won't shock me if they're in those games late.
Yeah, they've been phenomenal. We talk about them here, but I agree with you. Nationally, people aren't talking about them a whole lot.
Yeah. I have to forget who, when I go on other shows and say Washington, and they're like, wait, really? Washington? And I'm like, yeah, Washington's pretty good.
Yeah, that's kind of what we do here. So if we weren't talking about it, we'd be committing malpractice. We're also talking a lot about that Illinois-Indiana game, and you were saying you're having a hard time separating them right now. As you start to get ready for this game, what stands out to you, and what are the biggest things you'll be watching?
So usually when you get teams that are this close, and I do think that they're very close, I look at experience and I look at quarterback play, and that tips me towards Illinois. Now, it's fascinating, and I know you probably don't talk a lot about lines and gambling, and obviously I don't gamble or bet, but when I saw 5.5 Indiana, I know that they're at home, but I was like, whoa. That was surprising to me, and I have to remember and remind myself, Vegas has really disliked Illinois going back to the summer. Wasn't their over-under set at 7.5 with all of that returning, all the games that they won last year, all the returning contributors that they have, including their quarterback. I think the game is going to be won or lost by quarterback play late in the game. I believe it's going to be close. I think that Illinois' defense is very good, and they're uniquely built to kind of slow down what Indiana likes to do. Indiana loves that RPO offense, run pass option offense, but in order for that offense to be effective, you've got to create conflict with the defender. And Rev, when you're getting man coverage from the defense, there's no conflict for that defender. He's just defending his man. So unless you can run it really well, which Indiana has for 300 yards per game almost.
Yep. Over 300 every game. Yep.
And so if Illinois can slow down the run game, they're uniquely suited from a coverage perspective to make life difficult on Indiana and their quarterback, Bernardo Mendoza. I like Illinois in this game. I think there's something about what Brett Bielema has built, the way Altmaier is playing. He reminds me a lot of Rocco Beck at Iowa State. Like, just get him to the fourth quarter, and he can get it done.
You were talking a little bit about Michigan's quarterback, Bryce Underwood, and the fact that they allowed him to run quite a bit more. I mean, not a little bit more, but a lot more. I mean, he had negative rushing yards on the season going into that game against Central Michigan. He ended up having the best running game for a Michigan quarterback since Devin Gardner a dozen years before. What about that match?
Devin's going to find that clip, and he's going to put it on loop. Oh, I know. I'm going to send this to Devin. He's going to be so excited.
Our colleague, I should say, yes.
That's right.
So what about this game against Nebraska? You were talking about whether or not the Huskers are tough enough in run defense. How do you see these two matching up?
So as far as the bubble wrap I was talking about, Bryce Underwood had 2 non-sack rushes in the first 2 games. And then against Central Michigan, and to a man, and you saw it even in interviews and the way that they talked about it, whether it was Biff or Coach Moore, and they said, like, okay, we're not going to do that again. We're not going to go out there and put handcuffs on our best player from a restraint perspective just to play a style that we think could win because of what the opponent might do. And they said, nope. Our best players are going to be our best players, and that's what we saw against Central Michigan. So 2 non-sack rushes for Bryce Underwood in the first couple of games, 9 rushes last week. Now, 6 of them were scrambles, so it's not like they were opening up some sort of dynamic quarterback running system. That's not what they were doing, but it is indicative of how they coached him during the week, telling him, hey, you don't have to just throw it away. If it's there, take it. Go ahead. Be an athlete. Create. Be a threat on the outside. Of those 9 rushes, 6 went for first down, 2 were touchdowns. That puts an insane amount of pressure on a defense, and it puts the defense in conflict, like I was explaining earlier in that Illinois-Indiana discussion. When you couple that with the fact that they are a very good running team, even with an offensive line that has been banged up, and we'll see what happens at that guard position this week going into Nebraska. Justice Haynes has run for 100 yards in each one of the 3 games. Now you've got Underwood. How does the passing game come along? Can they get the tight ends going? Can they get Klein healthy? All of these different things. Michigan, if they want to, can be a dynamic offense. You're not a dynamic offense unless you're not a dynamic offense. How am I trying to say this? You don't score 63 points unless you're a dynamic offense. That's what I was trying to say right here. Been talking a lot today, but Rev, bear with me on this one. Speaking of Nebraska, I really love what's going on. They're improved everywhere on their team except for one area, run defense. They were top 10 in the country last year, 8th in the country in run defense. Hutmaker in there, those guys, those were really good defensive tackles, tough to move and tough to run the ball against. They're 75th, 6th in the country right now in rush defense. That will be tested. Michigan will come out and test them early. Can you stop us? Because if they don't, Michigan will take the crowd right out of the game. They'll go on long drives. They'll hold the ball and do what Michigan can do, running the football.
How important do you think this game is to Nebraska? I mean, they've lost 27 in a row to ranked teams. It's a streak that goes
since
back
2016.
It's crazy, right? I mean, it's just, if you would have said that to us in 2016, we would have said you're absolutely out of your mind. And then you look at their schedule, Joel, and as of now, they don't have another ranked team on the schedule until November. So, like, if you win this game, I feel like we have this conversation, we get premature, we get excited about Nebraska, and then it doesn't materialize. Yeah. But you think about, like, how the hype could build around this team. How do you see this game in terms of level of importance for them?
So can I use different words? Because because I think it produces different answers.
Sure.
If you ask me who is the game more important for, it's Michigan. You can't have two losses at this point, one of them being Nebraska on the road. So it's a more important game for Michigan. But the enormity of the game could be bigger for Nebraska because of what it could mean for the trajectory of their program, which is what I think you're kind of leading me into.
Yes.
Is like, if you can get the ranked win, if you can prove that you can play on that level and level up in the Big Ten and become something that we all hoped and thought you could become when Matt Rule was hired as the head coach. The enormity of a win would be bigger for Nebraska. But the game in and of itself for this year is much more important for Michigan, because if they lose this game, I don't know, man. Like, it starts to get into a, we think we're better. Are we better? You can't lose to Nebraska. You can't allow a team and a program to level up at your expense if you're the Michigan Wolverines. You're only, 18 months removed from a national championship. So it's imperative that they go out there and win the game. The urgency is with Michigan. Even if Nebraska loses this game, I hate to say this, it's like, okay, well, we circle the wagons and then we try again. Because, again, their schedule is going to allow them, even if they were to lose this game, to continue and go on and have a potentially successful season. They could still get to 9 wins, which I think people would accept as progress at Nebraska. So importance and enormity, two different things here in this discussion.
It's fun when you're in conference play, and I know you will be in Champaign next week for USC, Illinois. So you guys will get back to the Big Ten, but big noon this week, Salt Lake City, Texas Tech, and Utah. Enjoy that game. We always love talking to you, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, Joel.
Yeah, appreciate your time, man. Thanks for having me.